What's up, Bolt fam? Welcome back to the God of Thunder podcast. I'm your host, and it is another week of Charger football with a lot more content to talk about. Last time we spoke, it was right before the Raider game, and I don't think any of us thought that the collapse that happened, offense and defense, was going to take place, and a 63-21 score was going to be the outcome of that, which resulted in the firing of Brandon Staley. I was at the game, my first game at Allegiant Stadium, and the Charger fan to Raider fan ratio was to be was expected, as I think I would have, just based that we're in Las Vegas and the way that the Chargers are currently playing. But I did have a really good time. The stadium was actually pretty decent, and the Raider fans, at least from where I was sitting, were actually. I mean, we thought we felt bad for Raider fans. Man, everyone I seen felt bad for me, and that was before the game. So now imagine after the first quarter when it was 28-0, and it seems like everything that was going to go wrong actually went wrong, and there was just an avalanche of points scored by the Raiders, whether it was on turnovers, whether it was just letting them drive down the field, and it just was one of the. And I felt like I've said this multiple times this year, but what was the ugliest game I've seen the Chargers play? Um, just everything about it, right? So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I think that there's not much to be said, except for the fact that the Chargers players gave up on Brandon Staley, and he had said it earlier in the year. He felt like his team was competitive and there was no blowouts on their whole schedule, which he was right. Right, we played every single game this year to the very end, and it was at least competitive throughout the games. But this game was absolutely not competitive, and we got blown out of the stadium against. I mean, probably the worst team we could get blown out. It might be worse if we lost to the Chiefs in that fashion, but to all people, the Raider Nation, we lost that way. So with that being said, it was there was no way, no chance that the Chargers organization, the owner Dean Spanos, um, could not hold on any longer, and he released his statement and officially fired Brandon Staley. And to somewhat of a surprise, Tom Telesco on the same day, the day after the game. So, being that we know that, right, Brandon Staley is now out as the Chargers head coach. Tom Telesco is now out as the GM. We had, I think we all thought that the interim was going to be Kellen Moore, but being that he didn't take that position, I think is a good sign for the Chargers, for two things, right? So everyone thought that Kellen Moore was possibly up for that head coaching position after the end of this year. Being with his offensive performance as a play caller, as the offensive coordinator, hasn't been up to par or what we expected. It hasn't been close to what he did with the Dallas Cowboys. I think that ship has sailed, right? There probably was a conversation between him and the Chargers organization on if he were to accept the interim role, if he would have the possibility, or if he would be um, looked at for the head coaching position. Now, because he wasn't selected as an interim, maybe he turned it down because of that reason. Because he wasn't selected at that position, Callum Moore, I would say, is out as the head coach. And now that tells us two things about the Chargers organization, right? They're not looking for a hot shot offensive coordinator. And even though the Chargers played well in spurts this season, it wasn't enough to garnish that employment from Kellen Moore as the head coach. So, like I said, with that being said, it says two things. One, we're not looking for an offensive coordinator hot shot. And two, Kellen Moore is not our head coach, or not going to be our head coach. So what does that tell us moving forward in the Chargers search, right? There was some key things that was said with the Dean Spanos statement that he released, where he quoted himself. But basically, to paraphrase it, the Chargers they can't stand by for the sake of continuity, right? And the Chargers organization is going to move forward with a new vision. So with the past three coaches in Brandon Staley, and Anthony Lynn, and Mike McCoy, right? All first time head coaches. I would say a new vision, a new path would be to hire a veteran head coach, right? And I've been screaming it. I've been saying this. I have a video posted about a month and a half ago of who I want to be the Chargers head coach. And there's two big game that I think the Chargers organization is going to be going after. And that is going to be Jim Harbaugh and Bill Belichick. Okay. Now let's talk about those two candidates first. We could go into the other candidates that I think are going to potentially get I mean, they would get interviews, right? Especially if we haven't locked up Jim or Bill Belichick right away. I think like Ben Johnson's potentially going to get an interview. I'm hearing a potential Dan Quinn might get an interview, but those are offensive coordinators right now. And Dan Quinn has one of the biggest Super Bowl blown leads in NFL history. So I don't even want to go down that route, right? We as Charger fans know everything about blown leads, and there is no way in hell that we should ever even look at Dan Quinn just because of his history. Plain and simple. Dan Quinn may be doing very good defensively, coaching a defensive coordinator, but let's just face it, he's not a head coach. He may be a head coach for someone else, but he shouldn't be a head coach coaching for the Chargers with that major blown lead in the Super Bowl against Tom Brady. And then Ben Johnson, who's had two great years with the Detroit Lions, got it. Two great years. Brandon Staley had a good year. It's not even time. It's not even. Let's not even mess around with that, right? I think we're over trying to find the next best thing. I think it's time to revert back and look for an established head coach with real resume, with real character, who is going to come in with a winning culture. Okay? Take it all the way back to the Marty Schottenheimer days. He came in with a resume and with a winning culture. And he did that. And granted, we didn't get to a Super Bowl. I understand something to complain about, or something, one of the cons in looking back at it. But we need a culture changer. And what Jim Harbaugh and Bill Belichick bring are exactly that. Now, I want to talk about another thing, right? I think it would have been easy to hang on to Tom Telesco. Like that wasn't necessary. It wasn't a necessary fire, because I think that Tom Telesco over the past 10 years has done a pretty good job as a drafting GM. And there can be arguments made that he hasn't been the best roster builder. But as a GM who has drafted legit players, he has had rosters with legit talent, with talent that ranks in the top five year in and year out, with talent that has put the Chargers in Super Bowl consideration year in and year out. So to say Tom Telesco was a bum, or to say Tom Telesco wasn't a was a mediocre or a below average GM, I just don't think you could say that. And if you say that, I don't think you believe it when you say it. And I think though, with that fire signifies that the Chargers organization is ready to accept a head coach who wants to wear two hats, like a Jim Harbaugh, like a Bill Belichick. Because if those two coaches, either one of them, if they come in, they have a history of wanting to choose who their GM is, or they want to play a major role, or the role of the GM. So with that being said, we're seeing moves that correlate with that type of hiring, right? You're putting two and two together. And although they can't say it directly because Jim Harbaugh is currently employed by the Michigan Wolverines and Bill Belichick is currently employed by the New England Patriots, you could start to connect the dots. So first, I'll talk about Jim Harbaugh. Like in my last video, Jim Harbaugh is a proven winner, right? He has history with the Chargers. He played quarterback, I believe, in 1999 and 2000. He was our starting quarterback for the Chargers. He knows the family, and he's currently under contract with the Michigan Wolverines. There are reports that the Michigan Wolverines had offered him a contract with one stipulation. And that one stipulation was that he cannot seek employment in the NFL during that contract. Now tell me why that contract wasn't signed. He is also going through NCAA, possible NCAA suspension. He was already suspended 6 games this year by his own organization. Now, that was a necessary move, right? So, to ward off any a longer suspension in the following years by the NCAA. But I mean, what does that tell you that he did not sign that contract? Right? I think he right now is looking towards next year, which could be a huge suspension coming down from the NCAA. And if it isn't next year, because that process takes a long time, then it's going to be possibly the year after that. So he's under contract with the Wolverines, and we have heard multiple reports or multiple rumors of a potential Jim Harbaugh Los Angeles Chargers reunion. So the most recent one was published by Outkick saying that the Spanos family had reached out to the Harbaugh camp via backdoor channels reported by Outkick. And that's significant. There was a report, or there was a report on the Pat McAfee show with Greeny, who had said he had talked to Jim Harbaugh at a funeral, kind of like the Charger season, but at a funeral, and they had discussed for about 5 minutes about how Jim Harbaugh believes Justin Herbert is the best quarterback in the NFL. Now, if that's saying anything, that's saying that he does believe in Justin Herbert. And that's all a coach needs is to believe in their quarterback. Right? And then we have also heard other things, but I think those are two of the main things that we've heard. And I think significant enough to put these dots together and think or assume or predict that Jim Harbaugh is the front runner for the Chargers head coaching position. We are in a division with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. We are in a division with Sean Payton and Russell Wilson. And then we have the Raiders, who are the Raiders. Okay, so that's all I got to say. But in order to compete with these teams, you can't expect a first year head coach to play chess with these gentlemen like you would expect Jim Harbaugh or a Bill Belichick to play chess with them. Right? These are some of the most elite coaches in NFL history. Some of the greatest offensive minds in NFL history. And you can't bring a knife to a gunfight. If we hire a first year coordinator, we are essentially bringing a knife to a gunfight. So, With that being said, Jim Harbaugh has to be the Chargers' number one coach that they are planning on hiring or going to go after. Big game hunting, right? We have a top five quarterback. Now, some will say we have cap issues. Yes, we do have cap issues. We have four players, I think, over $60 million of our cap next year. But a lot of those contracts could be traded, possibly, or some of those players could be cut, which will save us upwards to 23 million for Khalil Mack, 20 million for Mike Williams. If we restructure um, Keenan Allen, who deserves to retire a Charger, we could save anywhere um, between the money that we owe him, which is like 36 million. So there's potential in doing that. And then we also have Joey Bosa, who we could potentially trade or cut. That no matter what you say, Joey Bosa is, for everything that he is with his injuries, he is a elite pass rusher, and he's going to garner some interest in the trade market. Khalil Mack, being that he's on the older side, I mean, will he? He's having the best season of his career. There's a possibility that we restructure his contract too, or could trade him. Because if you think about it, Von Miller, who's playing for the Bills, who has legal issues and who tore his ACL last year, so that might be reasons why teams would be reluctant to do a Khalil Mack trade or to sign him. But regardless, he is playing the best season of his career. So, yeah, you could say the cap, but there's ways out of it. I mean, if you look at the Saints, they've gotten out of it. So there are ways around it. But Jim has to be number one. Now I'll move over to Bill Belichick, who there's also plenty of reports about Bill Belichick and about him and the Patriots' time coming to an end at the end of the season, with that being decided after the Germany game in week 10, I believe, how they mutually agreed to part ways at the end of the season. So you have those rumors. You have the rumors also on the Pat McAfee show, who seems to be breaking lots of news nowadays. Shout out to Pat. I absolutely love his show. Um, that it was Pat McAfee and Dan Orlovsky. They were talking. Chargers came up. Bill Belichick came up. A lot of head nods, right? So that's just from sources. So take that how you will. But there's also that potential. And then now, I think that Bill Belichick. The thing about Bill Belichick, right, is he is 71 years old. And I think the issue with that is longevity. How long, if we do hire Bill Belichick, which I don't think Andy Reid or Sean Payton want to see two times a year, but if we were to hire Bill Belichick, what is his longevity? How long would he be coaching? How long can he coach for? Because with Justin Herbert only being 25, 26 years old, we know he's going to be the Chargers quarterback for the next 7 years. And I think we want to hire a coach that's going to be able to go on runs for the next 7 years with Justin Herbert at quarterback. So the longevity of Bill Belichick, I think, is the biggest question mark. Um, and I completely understand that, because if we only get him for 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 years, and then we have to restart all over, that's just going to put us in the same position that we are in right now, searching for another head coach and trying to find the right fit for Justin Herbert. But we know what Bill Belichick can do with an elite quarterback, and we know what he brings with his defensive genius, and we know how he maximized the potential of the players that he has based off of not only this year with all the injuries he's had, but years prior. And then I also want to address a rumor about the potential separating of ways between Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, Mike Tomlin, in my opinion, is in the same categories as those gentlemen. All right. He is a legit head coach who does not have a losing record on his resume and who has maximized the potential of the players that he's had on his team year in and year out. Regardless of who his quarterback is, he's had one of the elite defenses and he's utilized the players that he's had to the best of their ability. So if you're seeing the common trend of head coaches that are potential hires for the Los Angeles Chargers, you'll see that it is completely the opposite direction of what we have done the past 3 or 4 hires. And if you want to continue to lose or risk losing, then you go with a new coordinator. I don't care what anybody says. Like people are going to say you can't shy away from those offensive coordinators, but there's just too much risk. Like what is the risk reward in hiring an OC who's had a good 2-year run? One, okay, he's potentially a great OC, but is he a leader of men? Is he a head coach? And that's a real thing. Like we've all seen Brandon Staley, great defensive coordinator, bad head coach. Josh McDaniels, great offensive coordinator, bad head coach. Dan Quinn, good defensive coordinator, bad head coach. So I don't think the Chargers can afford to continue to go down that path. And it is time for that new vision, right? It is time for the big game hunting. And the Chargers have set themselves up perfectly to do that. Not only did we, I think typically, or we thought we were going to wait towards the end of the season. We didn't wait towards the end of the season. We did it 3 games to go. Put in interim head coach, interim GM. Don't think they're getting the positions. But now we have expedited the process of that head coach and GM search. Now we have the ability to start really looking at it with those interims in place. And I really think it is time that we go that route, that big game route, because we can't afford any more risk with these offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators who have been playing well but haven't really proved anything as a head coach. And it is what it is, right? Some people are going to push back on it. I got it. Like, why shy away? You could find a potential McDaniels. You could Mike McDaniel. You could find a potential, um, Ben Johnson could be that potential guy. You could potentially find the Rams head coach, right? He was a young gun. He came out of nowhere. 49ers head coach came out of nowhere. Offensive coordinator. And then you can even look at what the Houston's head coach is doing. He was the defensive coordinator for the 49ers. And he has catapulted that franchise along with their rookie quarterback. So, yes, there is always that possibility of that happening. And I think you'll see that every year, at least one offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator that gets a head coaching position subsequently do that and look good for that year as the head coach and potentially be, an up and coming head coach. But the Chargers have done that too many times. And the definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over and over. And we would be crazy to hire another OC like that. So I'll close this out with the Chargers coming off that loss, and now we're moving forward with our interim head coach and our interim GM to face the Buffalo Bills this week. And they're coming to town off of a huge win against the Dallas Cowboys. And they're looking to go on a run right before the playoff push. So we have them, and then we have the Broncos again, who are also looking to go on a playoff run. And then we have the Chiefs, who have struggled the past couple weeks, who are going to be fighting for playoff position by the time we play them. And I think that sets the Chargers up pretty well moving forward. I don't think we're going to get any wins to go to finish the season. And I think that only puts us in a better position for the draft, right? That's that's ideal for us right now, being that Justin Herbert's out and we're not going to win anything else. So I'll close it with saying that I think we're going down the right path, and I think we're going to keep hearing some rumors. We're going to keep hearing some news about potential new hirings, and I'm all for it as long as it's not a first year OC or a first year DC that wants to come in and get their first head coaching position. If you like this content, if you like my channel, go ahead, like, subscribe, shoot me some comments down below. I will be doing a game preview for the Bills Chargers, and we'll see where we're at that point in a couple days with our new head coach. We did make some roster moves today with the signing of Will Greer, and then we let go the TCU quarterback Max Duggins. So not too much news as far as roster goes or as far as any chatter from the players. I'm also looking forward to hearing from them and their take on the Brandon Staley firing. None of them, I haven't heard any support from them after the firing, which is kind of uncharacteristic of a team to do unless they really didn't follow that or didn't believe in that coach. So that's disappointing. I will say that Brandon Staley gave us a lot of hope in that first and second season, especially with making the playoffs. And he was, for everything that Brandon Staley was, that first year gave us a lot of hope. We love that fourth and Staley mindset, and it was just unfortunate that he shied away from it. I wish nothing but the best for Brandon Staley and his family. And even Tom Telesco, like I said, I thought he was a great GM. Maybe not the right GM right now for the Chargers, but he did his job as well as he could. So I appreciate Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco, and for what they did for this organization. And even though there was a lot more downs than there was ups, um, I think it's safe to say that that those guys hopefully go on and find other positions with a different organization. But with that being said, this is the God of Thunder. Thanks for coming in, tuning in, watching my video, hearing my takes. Go ahead, shoot me a like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you guys in a couple days. Bolt up, baby.